At 48 or C, sound behaves differently. It does not travel so much as it settles. It presses down into the snow, into the wood of the cabin, into the space between breaths. The woman wakes before light, not because an alarm tells her to, but because the cold has shifted again. It always does. Even inside, wrapped in layers that have learned her shape, she can feel the temperature moving like a tide. The stove has thinned overnight. The fire has pulled inward. Somewhere in the dark, wood contracts with a sharp private crack. She sits up slowly. Fast movements cost too much here. The air stings the inside of her nose. Each breath is measured, quiet, as if sound itself could be wasted. She listens first. Wind against the outer wall. The soft click of ice forming where yesterday there was none. And beneath it all, a sound that matters more than the weather. A shallow rhythm. Not hers. She stands, boots already waiting where she left them, angled toward the stove. The floor is colder than it was yesterday. It will be colder tomorrow. She feeds the fire without looking at the clock. Time has learned to follow her instead. The kettle goes on, not for comfort, but for function. Steam will loosen the room. It always does. When she crosses the narrow space to the other bed, she does not touch right away. She watches first. The rise and fall is there, but uneven, like a road that has not been traveled in a long time. She adjusts the blanket by a few centimeters. Too much would be wrong. Too little would be worse. Outside, the world is empty in a way that feels deliberate. No engines, no voices, no footsteps except the ones she will make later, tracing the same careful path she has traced for years. People had stopped coming before winter deepened. They had left messages instead. Instructions, advice, warnings that sounded reasonable from warm places. She remembers those voices without hearing them. The way they paused before saying what they had already decided. The way they used the word leave as if it were simple, as if it were a door she could close behind her without consequence. She moves back to the stove, adds another piece of wood, and waits until it catches. The light grows, then steadies. In the other bed, the breathing falters, then resumes. She does not speak. Words would not help here. What helps is staying. What helps is noticing small changes before they become large ones. Outside, the temperature continues its quiet work. The cold does not threaten, it does not rush, it waits. And the woman, standing between the fire and the bed, understands that this morning is not like the others. Not because something has already happened, but because something soon will. By mid-morning, the light arrives sideways, thin and pale, slipping through the single window as if unsure it is welcome. The woman uses it to check what cannot be felt. Skin color, the set of the jaw, the way fingers curl when the rest of the body is too tired to decide. She has learned to read these signs the way others read calendars. Today, they do not reassure her. Her routine does not change. Routine is not stubbornness here. It is insulation. She warms water, tests it against her wrist, cleans carefully, efficiently. Each movement is small, deliberate, conserving heat the way others conserve money. She counts breaths without appearing to. She listens between them. The stove demands attention every 40 minutes now. The cold outside has deepened, and the wood burns faster, as if aware of the stakes. She goes out once, just beyond the door, to bring in more. The air seizes her lungs immediately. It is a clean pain, sharp and honest. She does not linger. Frost forms along her eyelashes before she steps back inside. When she returns, she pauses. The breathing has changed again, not stopped, just shifted. She adjusts her plan without writing anything down. The day will be shorter. The night will arrive earlier than expected. These are not thoughts she shares. They sit quietly alongside the work. At noon, she eats standing up. Food is fuel, nothing more. She remembers when meals marked time, when there were reasons to sit. That was before the winters grew longer, before travel became a question of survival instead of preference, before the other bed became permanent. The warnings come back to her in fragments. They had told her the road would close, that help would not come if she waited too long, that there are limits even for people who know what they are doing. She had listened, she had nodded. She had not argued. Argument would have wasted energy. Instead, she had asked a different question, one that did not fit neatly into their forms or schedules. The answer to that question is here now. in the quiet work of keeping a body warm when it cannot do so alone. Outside, the wind rises, then settles into a steady pressure. Snow hisses against the wall like static. She checks the door seals, presses them tighter, and feels the building respond. This place knows her hands. It has learned what they mean. As afternoon fades, she notices something else. The pauses between breaths are longer. Not dangerously so. Not yet, but long enough to narrow her focus. She sits closer now, close enough to feel the faint heat that still exists. Close enough that leaving would no longer be a decision made later. The temperature drops another degree, then another, as if testing whether anyone is still paying attention. The woman is. She always is. She has moved a chair beside the bed, close enough that she no longer needs to stand. Sitting saves strength. Strength will be needed. The light disappears completely by mid-afternoon. The room shrinks without it. The stove becomes the center of everything, a small sun that must not be allowed to fail. She feeds it more often now, listening for the sound that tells her the fire has taken. When it does not come right away, her hand stays on the iron door longer than it should, coaxing heat back into the room. She considers the radio once. It sits where it always has, silent. Even if it worked, she knows what it would say. Advisories, numbers. The reminder that conditions are extreme, that travel is not recommended, that assistance may be delayed indefinitely. Information does not change reality here. Action does. The breathing falters again. This time she touches a shoulder lightly, just enough to remind the body that it is not alone. The response is minimal, but it is there. She notes it without relief. Relief is not useful yet. She thinks about the road, about the last place where the trees thin and the snow drifts higher than the hood of a truck, about the distance that feels short in summer and impossible now. She knows how long it would take her to reach it. She also knows what would be left behind in that time. This is the moment people imagine when they speak of leaving. They picture drama, raised voices, final words. What exists instead is a narrowing, fewer options, fewer movements that make sense. The decision approaches without announcing itself. She prepares anyway. Extra wood within arm's reach, water warmed and kept warm, layers adjusted so she can move without sweating. Sweat is dangerous here. She has learned this the hard way. As the wind presses harder, the cabin answers with small sounds of resistance. Nails creak, boards shift. She matches them with her own small movements, staying ahead of fatigue. There is no one to hand this off to. No relief coming at dawn. She looks at the door once more, then back at the bed. The space between them has never felt longer. She does not cross it. Instead, she pulls the chair closer, aligning her breathing with the other rhythm in the room, steadying it by example if nothing else. If someone were watching, they might think nothing is happening. They would be wrong. Everything is happening. It is just happening quietly. The decision does not arrive as a thought. It arrives as an adjustment. She adds another blanket, not because it is colder, but because the body beneath it can no longer trap what heat remains. She changes her own layers to compensate, opening a seam, letting a little warmth escape from herself and into the space between them. This is how it begins, not with a statement, but with redistribution. The night settles fully now. Outside, the temperature reaches its lowest point, a number that would mean nothing if she did not feel it in the way the fire struggles. She feeds the stove on a tighter schedule, never letting it drop too far. Each trip across the room is careful. A fall here would end more than one life. The breathing becomes erratic. She responds without urgency, adjusting position, clearing the airway gently, waiting. Time stretches, then snaps back into place. She keeps her hand where it is, counting silently until the rhythm stabilizes again. She thinks of sleep and dismisses it. Sleep is something other people do when the work is finished. She has learned to rest without closing her eyes, to let her body slow without letting it go. At some point, she realizes she has stopped thinking about leaving altogether. The option has dissolved, not through courage, but through irrelevance. There is only what is required now: fire, warmth, attention. Hours pass this way, or minutes. The difference no longer matters. The wind does not stop. The cold does not ease. She remains adjusting, compensating, responding. The cabin holds, barely. In the deepest part of the night, when the fire threatens to thin beyond recovery, she uses the last of the best wood. She had been saving it. Saving implies a future that is not guaranteed. She chooses the present instead. The breathing steadies again, shallow but consistent. She allows herself one long exhale. Not relief, just acknowledgement. This is what care looks like when there is no audience, no certainty, just a series of small, correct choices made without recognition. She stays awake. She stays still. She stays. The night stretches further than she expects. Fatigue creeps in at the edges, dulling sensation, slowing reaction. She counters it with movement, small circles of the shoulders, flexing fingers until feeling returns. She drinks warm water in careful sips, aware of how quickly dehydration hides in cold air. The fire demands more now. The woodpile has shrunk to a shape she does not like. She calculates without numbers, measuring by weight, by sound, by the way the flames respond. She cannot afford mistakes. The breathing changes again. This time, it does not recover as quickly. She leans in, closer than before, feeling the faintest warmth against her cheek. She speaks softly now. Not words meant to be understood, but sounds meant to anchor. The response is subtle, but it is enough. Outside, something cracks loudly, a tree giving way under the cold. The sound echoes, then disappears. She does not flinch. Startle wastes energy. She checks the door once more. Frost has crept further along the frame. She seals it again, pressing until her hands ache. Pain confirms she is still warm enough to feel it. At some point before morning, the fire dips dangerously low. She reacts instantly, feeding it the last of what she has set aside. The flame returns, thin but alive. She watches it until it steadies, unwilling to look away. The breathing stabilizes again, fragile but present. She allows herself to sit back, just slightly. Her eyes close for seconds at a time, never longer. Each time they open, she reassesses. Nothing is assumed. This is the longest part, not because of drama, but because of repetition. The same actions over and over, each one necessary, each one carrying consequence if missed. She thinks briefly of the people who had told her to leave. She understands them better now. Understanding does not change her position, it only sharpens it. The night begins to loosen its grip, not with light, but with a subtle change in pressure. The wind shifts. The cold remains, but it stops advancing. She notices because she has been paying attention all along. The first light arrives quietly, a thin line along the edge of the window. It does not warm anything. It simply reveals. The room looks the same as it did hours ago. Smaller perhaps, more warm, but intact. The breathing continues, still shallow, still uneven. But there, she notes it the way she has noted everything else, without celebration. Survival is not an event, it is a continuation. She tends the fire with what remains, adjusting for the coming day. There will be work ahead. There always is. The cold will not release its hold just because the night has passed. It never does. She allows herself to sit fully now, back against the wall, eyes open, watching the light grow incrementally stronger. Her body registers the weight of the night in small protests, stiff joints, slow movements. She accepts them. If someone were to arrive now, they might see only an elderly woman in a cold cabin doing what needs to be done. They would not see the decisions layered beneath each action. The moments where leaving was possible, and then not. She does not think of herself as brave. She thinks of herself as present. There is a difference. Presence is something you choose again and again, even when no one is watching, even when the temperature makes every choice more expensive. Outside, the wind has softened. The day will be harsh but manageable. She will adjust. She always does. She checks the breathing once more, then the fire, then the door. The order matters. It always has. This place will ask more of her. It always does. And she will respond, not because she was told to stay, but because staying is sometimes the only way care can exist. Some people leave when the cold becomes unbearable. Others learn how to remain inside it without disappearing.